Yeah, I mean, so I think checklists can be really useful depending on what it is you're doing. So there are really good uses of checklists, and checklists are useful when it's a binary yes/no answer. So there's some really basic stuff that you can and should do, right? So for example, right before you publish, you should check things like, do I have Google Analytics on this page? Or whatever analytics package you're using. It may not be Google Analytics. Have I got social share images on this page? Have I written custom tweet copy? Or is it just pulling in the description and the page title? Because that's pretty awful most of the time. So there's a bunch of stuff like that for which checklists are really, really useful. But actually, more often than not, before you start producing any content, the step that most people miss is kind of taking that step back and thinking, what do I want this content to do for me? Because I'm a massive believer that you need, whatever you make needs to have a specific purpose. So for example, if you are trying to create a page to drive conversion, to drive more conversion, like that's your end goal. And that's how you'll figure out whether or not you've succeeded, right? So there are some times when you actually just want to create a page that tells people perhaps why they should buy from you, or tells people why this is the solution for them. And what you'll create then looks very, very different to the sort of content that I do a lot of. I play mainly in the viral space. So I'm mainly interested in what's going to touch people, what's going to evoke an emotional reaction. And whilst those hooks are important in conversion content, the end game is very, very different. So what I do when I'm thinking about stuff that I'm trying to make for viral purposes, my success criteria ultimately is going to be like, did people share this? But when you create a page purely for conversion, it probably didn't ought to get shared, and that's okay, right? Because a page that exists to drive conversion isn't necessarily spectacularly shareable. The problem is when you're kind of going like, I want a page that drives conversion and gets loads of social shares. You start out there, you're just going to fail because you're going to basically mishit both. You won't get a page that converts and you won't get any social shares. So before you do anything, before you worry about checklists, I'd really take a step back and think, what is the primary purpose of this piece of content? What do I want it to do for me? And how will I know if I've succeeded? And it's only then you can really start measuring content, right? Because different content serves different purposes. Yeah. And I think actually there's an amount of that, but the trouble is that at a certain point everyone kind of starts looking the same. So if you want, you can offer free delivery, and that's good. Like, free delivery is good, but it still doesn't necessarily tell me that I've made the right purchasing decision, right? And actually, like, I'm really interested in fantastic product pages, and I think that there are a few e-commerce websites that do this really, really well. So there's a site in the UK it used to be called Appliances Online, and they're now on the URL AO.com. And what they sell white goods, so they sell fridges, they sell freezers, they sell washing machines, they sell ovens. Like, it's all really boring, really, really boring stuff. But something that they have done incredibly well, I think, is make really, really compelling product pages. So when you arrive on one of their pages, it will tell you how this particular machine might best suit your purposes. So for example, again, depending on your intent or the things that you care about, you might want a different sort of thing. So for example, if what you want is just a cheap washing machine, what you probably want to know is, this is the cheapest on the market and it's pretty good. But most people don't just want the cheapest one. Like, if you're very interested in the environment, for example, you might want a washing machine which doesn't use much water, because water consumption is terrible for the environment, right? So they've created a bunch of product pages that will tell you, like, this is terribly environmentally friendly because it uses less water than most other models. Now, clearly, the one that uses less water won't be the cheapest, but if the environment is more important to you than your pocket, that might be the washing machine for you. They've also created a series of videos demonstrating these products. Now, these aren't the sort of viral videos that you're going to share. There's no baby monkeys riding on pigs going backwards on these videos, right? Like, they're to all intents and purposes, pretty boring videos, they're product videos, but they're incredibly useful if what you want to do is buy a washing machine as opposed to entertain yourself for half an hour on YouTube, right? And I think what they've done is really think about what do our various users want? When people are buying a washing machine, what are they really thinking about? And they've tried desperately to answer those questions. They also have incredibly good user reviews. Another great site to check out is ModCloth. So ModCloth do online fashion. They're an online fashion retailer. And one of the smartest things I think that ModCloth have done is they've gone really, really heavy in two directions. One, product descriptions. So they don't sell you a dress, they sell you an idea. So they'll be like, this is the dress that will get you that promotion. This is the dress that you will slip on and feel like $1 million even though it only cost you $49. They're selling you an idea, not a dress. They're not telling you, this is a dress that is made of polyester and it has polka dots on it, right? They're selling you a kind of a dream, and it's wonderful to read, it's entertaining to read. The other thing they've gone really hard on is user reviews, which is, I think, spectacularly clever and important for clothing purchasing online. One of the things that they've gone really hard on is not just getting people to leave a review, but getting people to leave a review and tell you what dress size they are and how tall they are. And for somebody like me, this is really, really important because the fact that a dress looks good on a size 8 model is not spectacularly interesting to me because I'm not a size 8 and I'm not 6 foot. So the fact it looks great on somebody who's a size 8 and is 6 foot has no bearing on me at all. But I'm fascinated to hear what somebody else looks like in this dress when they're 5 foot and they're a size 12. Because I'm a size 12 and I'm 5 foot tall. And so I want to read the review of this other girl who's 5 foot and a size 12. If the dress looks good on her, it's probably going to look good on me. And again, that's about thinking about what your users really want to know. They don't want to know if it's going to look good on a model, because they're not models. They want to know it's going to look good on them. And I think ultimately it still comes back to intent. But you can create incredibly compelling product pages, and product pages are often the most neglected form of content, right? And it's very silly because it's probably where the money is most of the time, right? What is the hook? So the hook is the thing that evokes an emotional response. And so I talked quite a lot about the fact that the hook isn't necessarily transparent. You don't necessarily see the hook. And that's really to do with like the human condition. Most of what we do, we don't realize the reason why we do anything. And if you ask somebody, why did you share that piece of content? They'll post-rationalize after the event. They'll say like, oh, I thought it was funny or something. But that's not really the truth. Most of the time when people share or do anything, it's because it's spoken to them in some way, or they've seen some of themselves in it, or they've been able to identify with it. And increasingly, I'm of the belief that if you are looking to create viral content, the most important thing actually is one of mindsets. And if you set out to create something that makes people feel something, you'll probably go less far off track than if you start out by thinking, I'm going to try and make something that gets shares, because you're flip reversing it, and it doesn't quite work out. Because the second you're there going, I'm trying to make something that will get shares, you start picking into things which aren't the real thing. So you'll go like, oh, here are topics that get shared a lot, so I'm just going to make something about music, or because people really like music. Or you'll be like, people share games, I'm just going to make a game. And actually you're then focusing on the wrong thing. You're focusing on a format, or you're focusing on a topic, and you're not actually focusing on people and what makes them tick. And I think the reality is that everything we really do and we really need to do is about people. And it's too easy to lose sight of that. So yeah, that would be mine. Well, it depends. I mean, I think there are certain emotional responses that you definitely don't want. So you definitely don't want to create something that people just feel like, this just patronized me, or you got this really wrong. Like, you're wrong, you don't understand me, I hate you. Like, That's a bad emotional response. But actually, it's kind of been proven over and over again that controversy isn't necessarily a bad thing. So something that challenges your worldview isn't necessarily a bad thing. One of the most emotional pieces, oh, that's not an emotional piece. One of the pieces we made that caused the most emotional response, we did a piece called The Vocal Ranges of the World's Greatest Singers, and we found that Axl Rose had a greater vocal range than Mariah Carey. And this provoked a hugely emotional response. So there were a bunch of people who were just like, yes, Axl Rose, I love Axl Rose, he's brilliant. And then there were another bunch of people, like my favorite comment actually about this was somebody wrote a comment on a piece of coverage in the Daily Mail, and they said, whoever wrote this list is mentally ill. And I was just like, do you know what? Like, I kind of don't mind that you think I'm mentally ill. The fact that you've got so upset about something so silly, which I made, tells me that I tapped into something. And I think what it is because ultimately the idea of like who is the greatest singer, just to be clear, we weren't trying to set out to see who was the greatest singer. We were trying to find a data-driven way of kind of getting to that. But the point being is people feel very emotively about who is the greatest singer, and people were very emotional about the fact that like I hadn't included some opera singer. And I was like, do you know what? Like, that's cool. I wasn't trying to find the biggest opera star, right? But the fact that this is something people talk about, and actually I think you kind of see it, like Ed mentioned in his presentation, like, would this go down well in the pub? Is this something that people would spark off each other? And I think actually there is something in this, like something I've certainly seen my friends talk about in the pub a lot, and actually I've got heavily into is exactly that, like what is the best song of all time? And of course you're never gonna come to an agreement because it's all so deeply personal. Like, you know, the song I think is the greatest of all time is Just Like Honey by the Jesus and Mary Chain. And if you think anything different, you're wrong. And that's okay. It's okay for you to be wrong. You're wrong. But we can debate this endlessly, right? You can tell me about your favorite song and I'm like, are you kidding me? Faith No More? Really? Come on, son. Faith No More? Like, but we'll have fun with this, and we both know it's not really serious. Like, I know that I'm not going to convince you that the song that speaks to me the most is ever going to speak to you the most, because it's deeply personal. But this is stuff that people talk about, and this is stuff that people get excited about. And that's ultimately all I want from my content. So it's not necessarily that like a negative emotion is necessarily bad, as long as you've just not spoken down to people. If you've just patronized people, or if you've missed the point, like you're not going to come back from that. If someone just disagrees with you, you're probably okay. No, it is the short answer to that. No. I mean, I think that there are certain things that it makes me a little sad, right? So I think it's sad that on the internet, when we talk about long form content, we just mean something that's 3,000 words long. That makes me want to punch people in the face, because 3,000 words is not long form. It's not. Books are long form. Something that will take you 6 hours to read, that's long form. And some of the, you know, like if we want to talk about content holistically, like some of the content that I have consumed in my lifetime, the stuff that stays with me, the stuff I'm really passionate about, is much more long form than like internet long form. It's not 3,000 words long, it's 60,000, it's 80,000, it's 120,000 words long. Like that for me, my personal preference, that's the sort of content I really want to read and engage with. But that's not the sort of content that people typically read and engage with online. So I think part of the twisty turny awkwardness is, and part of the reason that people kind of say like, oh, interactive content's where it's at. It's not that it's interactive, it's just that it's quick and easy to consume, because you're probably not, or no, that's not fair. In terms of what you're doing at a certain time, and in terms of the way you interact with the web, like I always think about like when do I most frequently pick up my phone? Well, I'll pick up my phone while my friend's gone to the toilet in the bar and I don't want to be bothered by men, so I pick up my phone and I start titting around on my phone. I don't have time at that point. The time that it takes my friend to go to the toilet does not allow me to read a 120,000 word epic, which I may well love, but I do have enough time to to consume the sort of crap that I create for a living, right? And I do have time to engage with that. And I think it's contextual. So I do think there is an element of, ultimately, for the most part at least, what we're seeing trending in terms of what's shared online. It tends to be content that's readily consumable, scannable, enjoyable, fun. But that's because of the headspace we're in. When my friend has gone to the toilet and I'm titting around on my phone, I'm not looking for deeper meaning, right? I'm looking for a distraction so that guy there doesn't bother me, right? And I think that's the point. It's contextual. But I would never suggest by any stretch of the imagination that you should make a game or you should do a piece of interactive content. That's not necessarily the right thing, and also it's just a format in any case. It's not really the thing. Absolutely not. And I mean, I think it's really interesting, in terms of so I suspect actually what might happen, or no, maybe I don't suspect it, maybe I just hope it. I'm hoping for some sort of content renaissance, actually, because I think that as much as the listicle is a format which is shared and it's easy to consume and it's fine while you're in the pub, ultimately it normally doesn't enrich you in any way. And I kind of think of the listicle as the intellectual equivalent of pizza, right? I fucking love pizza. I really love pizza, but it doesn't do me any good. It's something that I eat and I enjoy, but it doesn't really fuel me. It just makes me fat. After I've eaten it, I feel some remorse and regret that I didn't put something better in my body. And whilst it's fun and whilst there's space for pizza, it's not something that ultimately, when I look back on my life, I do not think for a second I'm gonna go, I wish I'd read more listicles. When I look back on my life, I may well think, I wish I'd read some more fucking books. Really good books, really good literature. And so I suspect actually, much in the way that we're seeing, food fascinates me generally, not just pizza, but we're seeing a really interesting slow food movement. So if you think fast food, it's quick and it's easy, and you eat it and then you're filled with regret. Slow food, on the other hand, it's not so quick, it's not so easy, but you eat it and there's love in it. It took some time to make. It has some nutritional value. You actually feel better after you eat it. And I think actually, potentially at least, there will be a kind of renaissance with content as well. That it's not that web content or easily consumable content will die. It's just that maybe we'll draw back from it a little, because ultimately we're all suffering from some sort of hideous existential crisis. We're all wondering why the fuck we're here and what we're here for. And I'm fairly certain I wasn't put on the planet to make some fucking game that tells you how old you are when you hit an emergency stop sign. It's a fun distraction, but I really fucking hope it's not what I'm known for. I think I would encourage anyone who's thinking about kind of entering into the space, and I'm going to assume for my purposes that we're talking about some sort of viral content, so content that people want to share. If you're gonna enter into this space, something I would really encourage you to do before you get your feet wet, before you make anything, is go and consume as much of that content as you can. So go and see. So there are a bunch of tools. BuzzSumo, in terms of viral content, BuzzSumo is a great tool. It costs $99 a month, but you can get a free 30-day trial. So you don't even need to pay for it for the 30 days that you're screwing around, right? Go and find out what's actually being shared. So go and look at this stuff and try and deconstruct what's really going on. Try and get an understanding and an appreciation of the market as a whole, like the universe, the content universe as a whole, before you think about slotting yourself into it. So actually just take a bit of time. And just to be clear, like, I'm not saying like take 6 months to look at this shit. Fucking hell, you'd want to kill yourself. It would be awful. Take 2 days. I challenge you to take 2 days. And in those 2 days, you do nothing else. You don't respond to email, you don't do anything else. You just immerse yourself in this space and see what insight you can glean before you start out yourself. Because most of the mistakes that I see people making are because they've seen one thing and they think they know why it was good and they think they know why people shared it, but invariably they are wrong. They've jumped to the wrong conclusion. They don't actually understand why it's good. They don't actually understand why people have shared it. And so consequently, they make something which isn't good and isn't shared.